Chapter 1. A Yearning Heart. Rowan Ramos stood on the balcony of his family's opulent mansion, gazing out over the bustling cityscape of Manila. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the towering skyscrapers and weaving a tapestry of light and shadow across the streets below. Despite the breathtaking view, Rowan felt a profound emptiness gnawing at his soul. At 26 years old, Rowan had everything most people could only dream of. As the eldest son of Tanya and Rogan Ramos, he was heir to one of the country's most influential business empires. With his striking height, tan skin, and handsome features, he was the subject of many society pages and the object of countless admirers. Yet, none of it brought him the fulfillment he desperately sought. Rowan. His mother's gentle voice pulled him from his reverie. Tanya stepped onto the balcony, her elegant figure framed by the doorway. Her eyes reflected concern as she observed her son. "You've been out here for hours. Is everything all right?" He offered a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just thinking, Ma." She approached him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You've been distant lately. Your father and I are worried." Rowan sighed, turning his gaze back to the city lights. "I don't know if this life is what I want anymore." Tanya studied him silently, then spoke softly. "What do you mean?" "I'm grateful for everything you've given me," he began. "But I feel trapped. The parties, the business meetings, the constant expectations. It's suffocating." His mother nodded slowly. "Have you spoken to your father about how you feel?" He shook his head. "He wouldn't understand. He expects me to take over the company, to carry on the family legacy." "Your father loves you, Rowan. He wants what's best for you." "Does he?" Rowan's voice held a hint of bitterness. "Or does he want what's best for the company?" Tanya frowned gently. "That's unfair. Your father has worked hard to build our family business. He sees you as a part of that future." "But what about what I want?" Rowan exclaimed, his frustration surfacing. "I want to create something of my own, to find my own path." She squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. "Then you should. Life is too short to live under someone else's expectations." Rowan looked at her surprised. "You think so?" "I do," she affirmed. "Follow your heart, Rowan. Whatever you choose, I will support you." Relief washed over him. "Thank you, Ma. That means a lot." "Just promise me one thing," she said, her eyes misty. "Whatever path you take, don't shut us out." He embraced her tightly. "I promise." Chapter 2. Departure. Late that night, Rowan packed a modest suitcase. He filled it with simple clothes, leaving behind the tailored suits and expensive accessories that had become a uniform in his high society life. He wrote a brief note to his father. "Papa. I need some time away to find myself. Please understand. Rowan *. He placed the note on his father's desk, knowing it wasn't enough but unsure of what else to say. Before dawn, he slipped out of the mansion, the weight of expectation lifting from his shoulders with each step. Rowan made his way to the airport, purchasing a one-way ticket to Baton's, a remote province known for its pristine landscapes and tranquil atmosphere. It was a place untouched by the relentless pace of city life, and he hoped it would offer the solace he craved. As the plane ascended, he gazed out the window, watching Manila shrink beneath him. A mix of anxiety and excitement churned within him. He was leaving everything he knew behind, venturing into the unknown. But for the first time in years, he felt genuinely free. Chapter 3. Arrival in Baton's. The small plane touched down on the runway of Bosco Airport, its engines humming to a stop. Rowan stepped off the aircraft, greeted by the fresh scent of sea air and the gentle breeze that rustled through the swaying palm trees. The rugged hills and vast ocean stretched out before him, a stark contrast to the concrete jungle he left behind. He hailed a local jeepney and made his way to the town proper. The driver, an elderly man with a warm smile, chatted amicably along the way. "First time in Baton's?" the driver asked, noting Rowan's curious glances. "Yes," Rowan replied. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." The driver chuckled. "It's a peaceful place. Not much happens here, but that's part of its charm." "That's exactly what I'm looking for," Rowan said sincerely. He directed the driver to the home of Tati Jose, a man he hadn't seen in years but remembered fondly. Jose had been his mother's personal driver before retiring to his hometown in Batons. Rowan hoped the old man would remember him. They arrived at a modest house nestled among swaying grasses and overlooking the sea. Rowan paid the driver and approached the front door, rapping lightly. After a moment, the door creaked open, revealing a familiar face lined with age but lit with a spark of recognition. "Rowan? Is that really you?" Jose exclaimed, his eyes widening. Rowan grinned. "Hello, Tati. It's been a long time." Jose pulled him into a hearty embrace. "Look at you. All grown up. What brings you all the way out here?" "I needed a change of scenery," Rowan admitted. "I was hoping I might stay with you for a while, if it's not too much trouble." "Trouble? Nonsense." Jose waved a hand dismissively. "You're like family. Come in, come in." Inside, the house was cozy and inviting. The walls were adorned with photographs of Jose's family and mementos from his years in Manila. "I hope you don't mind simple accommodations," Jose said, leading him to a spare bedroom. "This is perfect," Rowan assured him. "Thank you. Are you hungry? I was just about to make some dinner." "I'd love to help," Rowan offered. Together, they prepared a humble meal of grilled fish, rice, and fresh vegetables. As they ate, they caught up on the years that had passed. "So, what brings the heir of the Ramos Empire to our humble island?" Jose asked with a twinkle in his eye. Rowan chuckled. "I'm not the heir anymore. At least I don't want to be. I needed to get away from the corporate world, the expectations, everything." Jose nodded knowingly. "Sometimes the things we think we want aren't what our hearts truly desire." "Exactly," Rowan agreed. "I want to live simply, to connect with people, and find meaning beyond wealth and prestige." "Well, you've come to the right place," Jose said. "Life here is simple but fulfilling." "I was thinking of finding some work around town," Rowan mused. "Maybe something hands-on." Jose considered this. "We could always use more tricycle drivers. It's honest work, and a good way to get to know the community." Rowan smiled. "I'd like that." Chapter 4. Embracing Simplicity. The following morning, Rowan and Jose set out to find a suitable tricycle. They visited a local shop where an old tricycle was for sale. It was a bit worn but solid. "This one has character," Rowan said, inspecting the vehicle. Jose laughed. "It'll get you where you need to go." Rowan purchased the tricycle and spent the afternoon cleaning and tuning it with Jose's help. By evening, it shone with new life. Feeling accomplished, Rowan decided to explore the town. Dressed in a simple t-shirt and cargo pants, he blended in with the locals. The streets were lined with quaint shops, children played freely, and the air was filled with laughter and music. As he drove along a coastal road, admiring the sunset, two women suddenly stepped onto the street directly in his path. Rowan swerved sharply, narrowly avoiding them. "Hey, watch where you're going," one of the women shouted, her eyes flashing with indignation. She was strikingly beautiful, with long dark hair and a fierce expression. Rowan stopped the tricycle and approached them. "I'm so sorry. Are you both okay?" The woman continued to glare at him. "You almost ran us over." Her companion placed a hand on her arm. "Claudia, it's all right. We're fine." Claudia huffed. "He needs to be more careful." Rowan raised his hands in surrender. "You're absolutely right. It was entirely my fault. Please accept my apologies." She seemed taken aback by his sincerity, her expression softening slightly. "Just be more cautious." "I will," he promised. "Can I offer you a ride somewhere to make up for it?" Claudia hesitated, but her friend smiled. "That's kind of you. We're heading to the town center." "Hop in," Rowan said, gesturing to the tricycle. As they rode, the friend introduced herself. "I'm Hazel, and this is Claudia. Nice to meet you both." "I'm Rowan." "What brings you to Batons, Rowan?" Hazel inquired. "I'm looking for a fresh start," he replied. This place seemed like the perfect escape. Hazel nodded. "It's certainly peaceful here." Claudia remained silent, gazing out at the passing scenery. When they reached the town center, she exited the tricycle without a word. "Thank you for the ride," Hazel said warmly. "Maybe we'll see you around." "I hope so," Rowan replied, watching as they disappeared into the crowd. Chapter 5. Intrigue and Connection. Over the next few days, Rowan couldn't get Claudia out of his mind. There was something captivating about her, a mix of strength and vulnerability that drew him in. He continued his work as a tricycle driver, getting to know the locals and immersing himself in the community. One afternoon, as he waited near the school, he spotted Claudia and Hazel exiting the building. Gathering his courage, he approached them. "Good afternoon, ladies. Need a ride?" Hazel smiled. "Sure, that would be great." Claudia eyed him skeptically but didn't object. As they rode, Rowan attempted to engage her in conversation. "So you're a teacher?" he asked. "Yes," she replied curtly. "That's admirable. What subjects do you teach?" "English and literature." He grinned. "Ah, a lover of stories. Any favorites?" She glanced at him, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "I have many. Why do you ask?" "I'm a bit of a reader myself," he admitted. "Maybe you could recommend something." "Perhaps," she said non-committally. Hazel watched the exchange with amusement. When they reached Claudia's stop, she thanked Rowan and headed inside. "Don't mind her," Hazel said as they continued to her home. "She's not used to strangers." "I understand," Rowan said. "She's intriguing." Hazel chuckled. "Just be patient. She'll warm up eventually." "How about you? How long have you been teaching?" "About 2 years," Hazel replied. "I love it here. The students are wonderful." They arrived at her house, and she thanked him once more. "It was nice talking to you, Rowan." "Likewise, Hazel. See you around." "Definitely." Chapter 6, Breaking Through. Determined to get to know Claudia better, Rowan made a habit of being near the school during dismissal. Over time, he offered her rides home, and though she was initially reluctant, she gradually accepted his gestures. One afternoon, as they rode in comfortable silence, she spoke unexpectedly. "Why did you come to Baton's?" He glanced at her, surprised. "I needed a change. Life in the city was overwhelming." She nodded thoughtfully. "I can imagine. I've always lived here. It's a simple life, but I like it." "I can see why," he agreed. "There's a sense of community here that's hard to find elsewhere." She looked at him more closely. "You don't seem like a typical city boy." He smiled. "How so?" "You're genuine. Most people from the city are different." "Well, thank you. I take that as a compliment." They arrived at her home, and before she exited, she paused. "Would you like to join me for a cup of tea?" He tried to hide his surprise. "I'd love to." Inside, her home was modest but cozy, filled with books and artwork. She prepared tea while he admired a painting on the wall. "Did you create this?" he asked, pointing to a vibrant landscape. She glanced over. "Yes, painting is a hobby of mine." "You're very talented." "Thank you," she said, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. They sat together, sipping tea and discussing art, literature, and their views on life. Rowan was captivated by her intelligence and passion. As the evening wore on, she looked at him thoughtfully. "You're different from what I expected." "In a good way, I hope," he said teasingly. She smiled softly. "Yes, in a good way." Chapter 7, Developing Feelings. Their friendship blossomed, and Rowan found himself falling for Claudia. They spent more time together, walking along the beach, exploring hidden trails, and sharing their dreams and fears. One evening, as they watched the stars from a hilltop, Rowan turned to her. "Claudia, there's something I need to tell you." She met his gaze, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "What is it?" "I've grown to care for you deeply. You're unlike anyone I've ever met." Her expression softened. "Rowan, I know we've only known each other for a short time, but I can't ignore how I feel," he continued. "May I court you?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why not?" he asked gently. She took a deep breath. "My family relies on me. I've dedicated my life to them and my students. I'm not sure I can give you what you're looking for." "I don't want to take anything from you," he assured her. "I just want to be by your side." She looked up, conflict in her eyes. "Let me think about it." He nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need." Chapter 8, An Unfortunate Choice. Over the next few days, Claudia seemed distant. Rowan gave her space, hoping she would come around. One afternoon, He saw her walking with a well-dressed man, their conversation animated. Hazel approached him, noticing his gaze. "That's Leo," she explained. "He's an old acquaintance of Claudia's." "Are they close?" Rowan asked, trying to keep his tone neutral. "He's been courting her," Hazel admitted. "His family is well off." Rowan felt a pang of jealousy but pushed it aside. "I see." Later that evening, Claudia approached Rowan at his tricycle. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Of course," he replied, stepping aside. "I've made a decision," she began, her eyes avoiding his. "I think it's best if we remain friends." His heart sank. "May I ask why?" She sighed. "Leo can provide me with security. My family needs financial support, and I have to be practical." "Claudia, I understand your concerns, but isn't happiness important too?" She looked at him sadly. "Sometimes we have to sacrifice personal desires for the greater good." He nodded slowly. "If that's how you feel, I won't press you. I wish you all the best." "Thank you for understanding," she said softly before walking away. Chapter 9: Heartache and Healing. Rowan found solace in Hazel's company. She offered a listening ear and a comforting presence. One evening, as they sat by the lighthouse watching the waves crash against the rocks, Hazel spoke hesitantly. "Rowan, I hate seeing you like this." He sighed. "I'll be all right. Just need some time." She hesitated before placing a hand on his. "You deserve someone who appreciates you for who you are." He glanced at her, noticing the sincerity in her eyes. "Thank you, Hazel. You've been a good friend." She smiled gently. "I'm always here for you." As weeks passed, Rowan began to heal. He and Hazel grew closer, their friendship deepening into something more. One day, he realized that his heart had found new hope in her. Chapter 10: A New Love. Under the shade of an ancient banyan tree, Rowan turned to Hazel. "There's something I need to tell you." She looked at him expectantly. "What is it?" "I've come to realize that my feelings for you have changed," he admitted. "You're kind, compassionate, and you bring joy to my life." Her cheeks flushed. "Rowan." He took her hand. "Would you consider giving us a chance?" She smiled brightly. Yes, I would." They embraced, both feeling a sense of rightness in the moment. Chapter 11: Shadows of the Past. Just as happiness seemed assured, trouble loomed on the horizon. Hazel's uncle, Rodolfo, fell deeper into debt with dangerous individuals. One evening, Hazel rushed to Rowan's home, her face pale with fear. "Rowan, I don't know what to do," she cried. "My uncle has gotten himself into serious trouble." He held her gently. "Tell me everything." She explained that Rodolfo owed money to a crime syndicate, and that they had threatened to harm her if he didn't pay. "I won't let anything happen to you," Rowan vowed. He decided it was time to reveal his true identity. "Hazel, there's something you need to know. I'm not just a simple tricycle driver." She looked at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "My full name is Rowan Ramos. I'm the CEO of Raro Holdings. I left that life to find meaning here." Her eyes widened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted you to know me for who I am, not for my wealth or status," he explained. "But now I can use my resources to help you and your uncle." She processed this revelation, then nodded. "Thank you for trusting me." Chapter 12: Confrontation and Resolution. Rowan used his connections to arrange a meeting with the syndicate leaders. Accompanied by security, he faced them head-on. "I'll settle Rodolfo's debt," he stated firmly. "But you are to leave Hazel and her family alone." The leader, a cold-eyed man named Chang, smirked. "And why should we trust you?" Rowan met his gaze steadily. "Because crossing me would be a mistake. I can make things very difficult for you." After tense negotiations, they reached an agreement. Rodolfo's debt was paid, and Hazel was safe. When Rodolfo learned of Rowan's intervention, he was ashamed. "I don't deserve your help," he confessed. "Perhaps not," Rowan agreed. "But Hazel cares about you. If you truly love your niece, you'll turn your life around." Rodolfo nodded, tears in his eyes. "I will. Promise." Chapter 13: Return to Manila. With the danger behind them, Rowan invited Hazel to return to Manila with him. "Are you sure?" she asked. Your life there is so different. I've never been more certain, he assured her. I want to share my world with you. She smiled. Then yes, I'll go with you. They informed Jose of their plans. The old man was sad to see them leave but wished them well. Remember, you always have a home here, Jose said warmly. Thank you for everything, Rowan replied sincerely. Chapter 14. Embracing New Beginnings. In Manila, Rowan's family welcomed Hazel with open arms. Tanya embraced her. Thank you for bringing joy back into my son's life. Hazel blushed. He's brought joy to mine as well. Rogan, Rowan's father, shook her hand warmly. Any woman who can make my son smile like that is a welcome addition to this family. Rowan showed her around the mansion, introducing her to his siblings and the staff. Hazel was overwhelmed but delighted by the warmth she received. That evening, as they strolled through the expansive gardens, Rowan turned to her. I know this is a lot to take in. She leaned into him. It's a new adventure. I'm just glad we're together. He smiled. Me too. Chapter 15. A Proposal. Several months passed as Hazel adapted to life in the city. She and Rowan grew even closer, their bond unshakable. One weekend he planned a special outing. He took her to a rooftop garden overlooking the city skyline. As the sun set, casting hues of pink and gold across the sky, he knelt before her. Hazel, you've changed my life in ways I never imagined. You stood by me when I had nothing, and now I want to give you everything. Will you marry me? Tears welled in her eyes. Yes, I will. He slipped a delicate ring onto her finger, and they embraced as the stars emerged above them. Chapter 16. Wedding Bells. Their wedding was a grand affair, attended by friends and family from both worlds. Claudia attended, offering heartfelt congratulations. I'm truly happy for you both, she said sincerely. Thank you, Hazel replied. It means a lot to have you here. As they danced under the chandeliers, Rowan whispered in Hazel's ear. Are you happy? More than I ever thought possible, she replied, her eyes shining. Chapter 17. Building a Future. Married life suited them well. Hazel found fulfillment in philanthropic endeavors, supporting education initiatives in underprivileged areas. Rowan continued to lead the family business, implementing ethical practices and community engagement. They faced challenges, the scrutiny of high society, the demands of business, but together, they overcame each obstacle. Chapter 18. The Gift of Life. A year into their marriage, Hazel discovered she was pregnant. Overjoyed, they prepared eagerly for the arrival of their child. When their son Owen was born, Rowan held him gently. He's perfect, he murmured. Hazel smiled tiredly. Our little miracle. They cherished every moment, embracing the joys and trials of parenthood. Chapter 19. Giving Back. Determined to honor the simplicity that brought them together, Rowan and Hazel established programs to support rural communities like Baton's. They funded schools, healthcare facilities, and sustainable development projects. Never forget where we came from, Rowan often said. It's the foundation of who we are. Hazel agreed. And it's our responsibility to give others the opportunities we've had. Chapter 20. Full Circle. Years passed, and their family grew with the addition of a daughter, Lily. They balanced their lives between the city and frequent visits to Baton's, where they maintained close ties with Jose and the community. One summer, they hosted a festival in Baton's, celebrating the culture and traditions of the island. People from all walks of life attended, bridging gaps and fostering unity. Claudia, now the headmistress of the local school, approached them during the festivities. You've done amazing things, she praised. Thank you, Hazel replied warmly. It feels good to give back. Claudia smiled. I wanted to apologize, Rowan, for how I treated you years ago. He shook his head. There's no need. We all make choices that lead us to where we are. She nodded appreciatively. You're a good man. I'm glad life has treated you well. Epilogue. Legacy of Love. In the quiet moments, Rowan and Hazel often reflected on their journey. Who would have thought, Rowan mused, that a chance encounter on a small island would lead us here? Hazel leaned her head on his shoulder. Life has a way of surprising us. They watched their children play among the flowers, a symbol of the life they built together. Do you have any regrets? she asked softly. Only that I didn't find you sooner, he replied, kissing her forehead. She smiled. Here's to many more years of surprises. Agreed, he said, wrapping his arms around her. Surrounded by family, friends, and the legacy of their shared efforts, Rowan and Hazel knew they had found true happiness. Not in wealth or status, but in love, compassion, and the simple joys of life. The inn,